This episode of the Restoration Today podcast is brought to you by Wylander. Stressed about hiring and recruiting? Tired of outsourcing hiring needs to companies that just don't get it? It's time to discover the recruitment process that will change your company. Wylander's team of recruiters understands the restoration industry and partners with companies across the U.S., filling hundreds of full-time positions every year. The Wylander process is transparent, proven, and cost-effective. Learn more at wylander.com. Hello there. Thanks for checking out a new episode of the Restoration Today podcast. Today, I am joined by a fellow podcaster, a friend in the industry. It is Klark Brown. He is from Restoration Advisors. That's right. Do a little dance. I love it. Klark, I am very excited to have you here and excited to catch up with you and hear everything that's going on in your world. I know that you have a lot on your plate, some exciting things that you're launching that could be great for restorers looking for a new, maybe different way to grow, connect with other restorers, kind of share struggles that are going on in the industry. You know, we hear a lot of the same things over and over and over again of what restorers are struggling with, right? So you're in the process of creating something where restorers can come together and work together to help kind of overcome some of these struggles. So that's kind of almost getting way ahead of myself. I'm going to start at the beginning. Klark, welcome. Go ahead and just introduce yourself. Share a little bit about your background in the industry for people who don't know you, so that they have I think it's important that people understand that you have a very rich, long background in the industry, have been doing it for a while in various capacities. So share a little bit about that.
So is that your way of saying that I'm kind of older? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Yeah. So I'll start with Klark Brown. Currently own a firm called Restoration Advisors, because that's what we do. We advise people in the restoration field. I don't work with any other trades. Going back, my entire career has been around service companies. I love to be of service. So why not make a living doing that? So my first career family business growing up as a wee toddler in East Texas was the dry cleaning business. My grandfather and father told me that our job is to make people, professionals, look great so that they can present well where they are. We knew what our place was from a long time ago. And I've always kept that part of me, as I have a role to play in the success of others. And at that time it was starch pants and shirts and snap color shirts. So anyway, I went through my career with that, owned several of my own, and it evolved into this disaster restoration industry through cleaning the textiles for that industry, and sold that company, and really kind of linked in with some clients and customers that were just also great friends. My clients have always been friends. Some people will say, don't make friends with your clients. They're my best friends. We have something in common, and they are the only ones that understand this crazy industry that we're in, right? Mm-hmm. So I went to work for a company, ended up being two different companies over 14 years, big, large loss national brands. Some are friends of CNR in the industry. One was Cotton, and the other it was Interstate. Now it's First On Site. Cut my teeth with those companies. Immeasurable amount of experience I gained from their leadership and the opportunities there. I contributed to what I could. I think we developed what maybe has become part of today. So I have a lot of experience on the contractor side. I understand the plight. I also own several of my own businesses, including a restoration company. So I understand the complexities of cash flow and staffing and marketing and blah, blah, blah. And I just got tired of the travel of that, Michelle. And so I morphed over into the consulting side. And it's funny that people in this industry that are more cynical say, well, you either become a consultant or a software company. Well, we need both. We need both. But anyway, I'm in love with the idea of coaching people. I was a baseball player, and I had coaches that transformed my abilities. I'm surrounded in my industry with peers like Chuck Bioland and Chris and Barry. I mean, there's just so many people that are making differences, and I just wanted to be part of that. So we have a small firm that works with small to medium contractors, trying to weed through the issues of today with outside eyes. And sometimes those are the eyes we need. So, and then besides that, that's my job. That's what I buy my groceries and my Dr. Pepper with. But I do that so that I can have the side of me that's more service oriented and advocacy. And I love I love advocating for our industry. I'm part of a lot of different groups. Michelle and you and I are in part of several trying to develop great initiatives for things like that. And I applaud all of your behind the scenes work on that. And I have an association called the Alliance of Independent Restorers. And I do believe that 10 to 12 years ago, we kind of fell into this everyone's competition, but we've changed that narrative in some circles, and people are seeing the value of my competition could be my collaborators, and I could learn from them, and they don't do projects that we do, and we can, switch. I can help them with equipment rental, and there's just so many opportunities that I love sitting back and watching. And then, of course, responding to an area-wide disaster we've done. And there's a lot of groups that do those things. We've just found a little niche that has a small voice that people feel comfortable in. But that's me in a nutshell. I'm heavy on social media. I'm loud. Some people say abrasive, but I just kind of straight to the point. But I think we all know the things we need to do. Sometimes we just have to say them over and over and over. But just blessed to be in an industry that gets paid to care for people. Not a lot of people can say that.
I totally agree with that. Okay, going back to your roots in large loss. I feel like everyone wants to do more large losses, right? Like every restoration company just about wants to do more, even shift their balance more toward that, right? Less residential, more large loss. What are some of the critical components to have in a company to be good at large losses? What does it take to be really good at large loss?
Well, so I want to start by using the term large loss is extremely objectionable. Large is different for everyone. I like people to just think of the word commercial, commercial versus residential, because that sets up the stage where it's still a loss. It's still a peril. It's still a disaster. There's a different demeanor from the client base. There's the emotional, sentimental, fear, and then there's that of I got to get in business, my people, financial, market share. So if you can manage those, so large is a subjective word. And last year in the RIA Tech Conference, Craig Powers and I we kind of used some of this terminology and said, know your capacity. Everyone likes to exceed it, but if you want to be remembered for doing something well, don't take on more than you can. Michelle, systems and processes, things move faster in commercial. The needs, there's usually a lot more people involved from stakeholders and parties. You've got to really be good at communications. Your team has to be tight. I would say people ask me all the time, what do I see as the biggest hindrance from diving into the commercial or even large loss world is you don't leave your home base. Don't leave what got you here behind and leave that open, because you've been building relationships for a long time to get those residential, because large losses don't occur often. It's hard to make a business on just that. It needs to be a supplement or a booster to give you a great year. But I would just say having a plan. A lot of people plan it when it happens. I would say start yesterday of role playing. What would that look like if we had an area-wide flooding, a river floods, and I have 34 people calling me for 5 minutes? And how are you going to triage that? How are you, what are your people going to do? And then I would say your people is the second thing. Is your staff needs to know how to shift into even sometimes a supervisory role, because on a larger loss, you're going to bring in more people, and your staff will no longer be the doers, but they might be partially the management and the supervision. And that's something they need to at least be aware of and set some expectations. But I see a lot of people just fall back into everyone's all Indians, no chiefs, or vice versa. Yeah.
What do you tell clients that call you or friends that call you and say, hey, we've never been to a CAT before, but this hurricane just hit Florida and we want to go? What do you say?
I ask them how much money they have. No, I really do, but it's very expensive. There's so many hidden costs. And again, you're going into the dark. I mean, in an area-wide disaster like, Florida, Louisiana, power is going to be out. You might not have cell signals. And these are all the creature comforts that we take for granted. are you going because you've been invited, or are you actually door knocking? And how well received is that going to be from a population, whether it's residential or commercial? If you're going to be knocking on doors and you're from Indiana, is there trust built there? So what is do you have a good, do you have an online presence so that they can at least check you out back home and say, oh, well, there's 413 reviews. At least I know you're a legitimate company. But if you have none, think of the customer when you go to those things, but have money, because it's going to be larger scale. You might be running 15 jobs, everything, payrolls every week, but cash flow will be just as slow as it is at home. It doesn't mean that just because it's a cat, money is flowing in. But I usually see that's an area where people get really handcuffed and crippled long after the storms are over and they go back home. The repercussions and the pain points of that event, while the payoff is good at the end, getting there causes a lot of constraints. And I would just say have friends in the industry and partners, and don't do it alone is a big one. If you know someone that's doing it, make your first year a trial run and practice, and team up with someone and get a less risky approach to it. I always recommend that. And I can usually introduce people who are, because the good companies are always looking for help. They're usually falling short of skilled, qualified people. So those two parties just need to be introduced to each other. And I might know some of those people that, if that's something someone's interested in.
Okay. What would you say are the top 3 struggles in the industry right now? I think I can think of one that's like really obvious. I'm curious what you would say are top 3.
Same thing. Staffing, good quality people. And we don't have an answer for that. I think we can draw a lot of different parallels. I just think that the desire for younger generation people that can actually want to jump into a career aren't wanting to do blue collar work. I think that's, of course, and that's probably been building for a while. I think we're turning into more of a digital world. It's just, I don't want to dive in too deep. I think one thing that we haven't talked about is so many people, young people and old, are doing, you can make a business online simply now. I think people are doing side hustles. I mean, something as simple as people that go to Target or Kohl's and buy things, or TJ Maxx, and then resell on Amazon. There's a business model there that our generation just doesn't quite see. So I think staffing is it. I think it's just acquisition of lead generation in general. I think that there's so much noise. Everyone's screaming now for marketing because it's so saturated. I think there's a screaming, and how do you hear? If you're on the front row at a Metallica concert and you're yelling, the only person that's going to hear it's right next to you. So I think that, how do I acquire the right customers? How do I have the right customers see me? And then, of course, I don't know if these are in order, Michelle, but I think the smaller and medium guys are looking about what's going to happen to us. I mean, everyone's seeing the M&As occurring and some really good collaborations and acquisitions that are happening. And I'm hoping that some really positive things, but those that are not in a position to want to or able to sell, they're looking at that ocean has become with a lot bigger boats, and I'm still this small boat. Where am I going to fit? And then that's where, I come in. I said, let's find your niche, and your community. I mean, I live in a small town relatively now in Virginia, and I support local small businesses because I go to the chains, and while they have systems and processes, they aren't very customer centric. They're usually profit driven. I like people who appreciate my business. And I think if any restorer can remember that, but I think those are some of the things. I mean, if you wanted to go down the list, I think the pricing struggles, insurance pressure, those have been there forever, but I think they're just the fatigue of them happening. It just depends. I get a call from, it's always different. Like someone, depending on where they are in the life cycle of their business, but staffing is up there, and we recognize it, but I don't know how to shift it. But I'm seeing it get better. If there's anybody that's watching that can agree, I have seen people who 8 months ago couldn't get people to respond to an ad or show up for an interview are starting to get people. They're not getting, complete adherence, but they're getting, we have set up interviews. People are starting to show up. Then it's just a matter until they fit my culture and my team.
What kind of advice do you give people who you mentioned pricing and getting paid and stuff like that? That is always a struggle, right? So what do you recommend restorers do if they are struggling to get paid or find themselves in conflict a lot with adjusters? I think there's a lot of different answers and ways that this can go. Are you using Xactimate? What are some other ways? This is a loaded question. I know you've got multiple layers of answers for it, but go for it. Where does it take us?
I think there's two different topics there. I think one is, first off, I think that there needs to, from my point of view, and I talk to a certain segment number of people have to know their cost of business. People have to generally know and we're talking about a survival thing here. We're talking about, I need to have a price that sustains my company. It can't be volume. A lot of people run their business off, my profit's not great, but if I beat that with volume and get more calls, it will help. When it actually, in a financial world, it actually hurts. If you're doing low margin work and you're not making money per project, the more of it you do, you're just accumulating more debt and you're having to finance the next couple of jobs, because we do have this lag in cash flow. The other side of that is being competitive in your market, whether you get your work directly from referrals from maybe the insurance side, which might be adjusters or agents or something like that. There's a balance of customer service that you've got to keep them where they still win. And I teach negotiations, collaborative and competitive. If you plan to have a relationship, both sides need to walk away feeling great. Now, I'm not going to get in a relationship where someone requires me to lose money just to get the business. That's not reciprocal. Yep. So if you're in the right relationships, you do have that. You might have property managers who have that aren't insurance, property management. They may have budgets. And if you want their work, you have to work in their world. Then that comes back to if you can't change your price much, become super efficient, work on efficiency and cut overhead, get rid of the things in your business that you don't need. I see those a lot. I look at P&Ls. I'm like, how much do you use that? What do you need? You have this software that you use that's $950 a month and you're almost never touching it. Those are areas. And, so efficiency is it, but, pricing is a big one. I don't think it's really software. If you want to use Xactimate, fantastic, but use it the right way. If you want to use Excel, use QuickBooks. I mean, the software is a means to an end. I think we get tied up in those conversations and we forget that we have humans and things like that. So pricing is tough, but I think it comes back to some general business practices, Michelle. You've got to run a business to be profitable. It doesn't mean you're being greedy. It just means that I have a financial responsibility to everybody that works for me to not bounce payroll checks. And me as an owner, you know how many owners that I know that don't barely, if at all, pay themselves a salary and they're working for free just to have a company. Now, there may be some independence currency there, but that person, if they're not super comfortable and independent, they're not going to be creative and they're not going to scale. They're going to be struggling and in a bad headspace. So knowing your numbers is the first thing that I would tell anyone. It's not hard to do. It's just, it takes time to do it. There are a lot of books about contractor pricing and bidding and job costing. A lot of free resources on the internet, of course. It's one of those things you have to learn it, but don't focus on the software as much. Let the software be whatever you decide that you price it. That becomes the automation to do it. Does that help?
It does. Okay. Hopefully I'm not putting you on the spot too much with this question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. What do you consider a good profit margin for a restoration company? It can be a span, but I'm curious if you have a window where you feel like this is a fruitful place to be.
Well, it is. It's not the same for everyone. Are you talking gross or net?
Let's talk gross.
The gross margins, cost of doing business. I think, I'm talking about our space, knowing that what our cash flow, what our receivables span is going to be. I think anyone that's under 50% a gross margin is probably testing some boundaries of being uncomfortable, unless they have a business structure that's set up where they get paid like in a net 10 days. I mean, you have to consider that you need your profit to fund the next 3 to 40 jobs. And so that's it. But and then when you start getting into net, I think that's where it gets a little bigger window, because you have a lot of franchises that have royalties, and their cost to do it, their net's going to be a little lower. They've got to look at that. Every franchise tells me, if I'd have known what I know now, I wouldn't have joined a franchise. And I hate hearing that, because there's some incredibly great franchises. But I think net, a good healthy company that's scaling, that's serving their community, has good brand, is somewhere between 22 and then I think if you're doing more than 30, you're probably getting into the gouging area. You're probably getting a lot of fight from outside entities, because you're non-standard pricing, which I don't like the term standard pricing, but every industry has a realm, unless you can absolutely show value. Ruth Chris can get away with $80 steaks because they have the experience and stuff, but the average steakhouse can't do $100 steak if they just are really a $30 steak. That's just the reality. It's Uncle Ed would say, it's between the buyer and the seller. The buyer believes you're worth that, they will pay it, but it doesn't mean the whole industry will.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people claim 60% as their gross. I think that's a great number. And then you just got to really work your P&Ls to get your overhead to where it's manageable but still scalable. And maybe you offer benefits to your staff. Those are the extra features that they're company specific. And then regionally, it costs a lot more to operate in some places than others. So you've got to adjust for that.
So what trends do you see on the horizon, or what things do you think are going to be impacting our industry in the next maybe 2 to 5 years, let's say? I mean, there are some obvious things, like we know inflation is going to affect us more, and supply chain issues in some areas are getting better. I know we know but what else are we looking at? Do you kind of see that's going to change or affect us?
Not a big industry forecaster. I always read your articles and the RIAs, but I think we're going to see something that looks like a recession coming. I think everyone that's got any sense has watched markets and realized that this won't sustain. I think that COVID, as bad as it was, it taught us a lot. I think a lot of people adjusted their companies and are more prepared for challenges like that again. I think those types of things are like burning down a forest. While it's terrible, you grow back stronger with better fertilizer. I think the M&A part is still going to make a big impact on the smaller. I think with larger budgets, the world has moved to digital marketing, digitally, and whether that's through pay-per-click or SEO, those that have the big budgets it's a pay-to-play game, and they can outsource that. So the smaller companies need to really work on their boots on the ground marketing to their communities and becoming known as the expert, not the biggest company, but the best company. But it's hard to say. I think there's some also getting technical. I think there's some really cool features coming along with technology into drying, and some remote monitoring that I've been anxious for years. I think that there's some automation that's coming through. Some of those things that we might see jump leaves. Some people I know that are already talking about some outrageously great AI integrations that I'm excited about. It's just a matter of, it's kind of like when Matterport came around. It took a while for it to click, but now it's almost standard. I think some of those things are going to continue to pop up because we've got some bright, smart outside people that are coming in and finding this space to be compelling to bring those goods in.
Yes. Okay, let's shift and talk about your mastermind groups and your peer-to-peer. So let's talk about that. So it sounds like you did this last year as well. So we're bringing it up again, right? So what did the masterminds look like? They're starting in probably mid-August, and go ahead and walk us through what those look like.
Yeah, let me tell everybody why I think we do this. So, anyone in business has heard the term mastermind. I think when I'm doing beta for this, and when I'm validating this idea, a lot of people think it's a CEO level only. And that makes me think of maybe this is more of a workshop, but mastermind still fits as a word cohort. Michelle, between clients and non-clients, I'm fortunate to get to speak and meet and talk to lots of restorers. And obviously staffing has been, as we've already mentioned, our number one on our list. But I talk to the individuals that work at the companies. I do a specific walk around and sit in the conference room, and I have some questions that I ask lower level junior leaders, and that may be a lead tech, could, depending on the side, could be operations manager and HR managers, and ask, what do you think? What, from where you've worked before, and what do you not have here? And those kinds of questions. And I hear a lot about, well, the leadership focuses on getting new people in, but there's not really a lot of investment in the ones that are here showing up. And I said, that's interesting. And I always say, tell me more. They said, how do we become like Michelle? How do we, Michelle travels the country, goes to meet other people. The horizons are, our younger people are wanting just like they want, and there's go-getters that just go get it. And there's some that are just more passive and more supportive and say, I've got a job to do. So last year we said, let's just have this junior workshop mastermind for that level of team, because a lot of owners don't have time to be mentors to everyone. They try and they do their best, but they also know that there's things they don't know. So we did a mastermind last summer. It was great. And we built a community around it so that team could collaborate outside of the sessions. And those have gone on to become, some of them have visited each other's businesses. They say, hey, I'm going to be at the experience. Are you going to go? Yeah. And then they have, so there's been that. And that's how they build those are future owners of companies that are now building connections to that. So we're doing it again this year, but this year it's going to be a little different. We've selected eight sessions every other week, 8 different lesson curriculums around leadership, production, and time management and stuff like that. And what I'm talking about is how to be, if you're an operations manager, you have a staff meeting, but how does a really, really effective leader have a staff meeting where expectations are clear and accountability is 100% already there, and everyone feels not even a little bit foggy about what's expected, and those kinds of things. And time management. I've got a lot of great ways that I teach people that you have a lot of time in your day, you're just spending it on different things and then you got to get to the root. So I'm spending my time answering everyone's phone calls. Well, let's focus on figuring out how to have those people where they don't need to call you, so you just buy back hours. So we're going to have lessons week to week or every other week, and real life, about 12 people per, and we're already seeing just a good, it's just great interest. It's not overly expensive. I think, it's less than an IICRC class. And the biggest problem we see, and we're going to ask for a commitment. I just want everyone knowing that sees this, might be interested. We are vetting people. All we ask is that you make a commitment in the best of your ability that you will show up. We understand the world, the industry we're in, and we understand emergencies happen. But there's nothing worse than having a cohort with only 2 people in it. And it just doesn't make a great experience for those that did show up. So if it might not be the season for someone, maybe next season they'll be in a better place. But I think that with some tools, we can really do it. But we're really excited about it. We call it Accelerate because we just want to, if we can't find new people, let's improve the ones we have so that we can spend more time looking for the right people outside.
Do you find that restoration companies get stuck? I feel like with the labor shortage, they aren't promoting from within as much as they maybe promise to when they hire somebody in. On Monday, I'm going to announce the winners of the Unsung Heroes Award that I just launched, and both of those people have been promoted within their company very recently to higher positions, and I feel like that's almost rare at this point. And I asked them both in talking to them, like, were you promised those things when you interviewed? Were you told that the ladder would move up? I think owners get stuck and leaders get stuck, right? And like, I want to promote, but I don't have people.
You're 100% right. You're 110% right, actually. that very rare, or you said there's very few companies, and it's not even always intentional. It's
No.
if I can't fill your position, I can't move you up. I have junior leaders that say, if you give me the ability, let me find my replacement so that I can move up. Let me hire and train a person instead of someone on paper. A lot of junior leaders say, we keep hiring people that I wouldn't want coming into my house. Then you give them to me to train. Let the people that do the work, and I think this comes back to delegation is difficult for entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs' personality types are, I kind of know what's best and I'll do it. And I don't know how to train people because I've been singular in my head. And secondly it's just quicker for me to do it myself than train someone, but that doesn't scale. But I have a lot of people say, my only success to grow in this company is if we get lucky in the lottery and find somebody that'll take my place. And that's not engaged. They're not the owner. I tell people, you want loyalty from people and you get it from a lot, but people's loyalty will never be matching the owners. I mean, they just don't own it. They don't have skin in the game. And if they're faced with a lot of other opportunities and they have dreams of a home and a Disney vacation, they're going to take it. So we have to work on splitting our time between investing in those that are inside, maybe even more than the outside. And that's what this is. People say, how do I grow? I don't know a lot of things. And I have a book vault. I have a book list on my website, and it's just it's 100 books or so. It's just people saying, what are you reading? It depends on, is it financial, leadership? So you nailed it. I think 3%, 5% of companies, you will see management internally jumping through and growing up. And I think that is, I do an exercise, Michelle, with companies. It's called Voice. It's a Six Sigma thing, Voice of the Employee. When you put out and I've got it, it's a list of questions to ask your employees, and it can be anonymous or they can put their name on it. It's hard to read. I mean, every time I do that, the owner's like, oh my gosh. And I was like, are you surprised? And it's like, no, I'm not surprised. But a lot of it is we start things and we don't finish. We don't give things long enough to work. We bring in people for a pulse, but they aren't really a fit for our company. And then we're left to deal with them and they don't show up, those kinds of things. And then people say, I've never asked my opinion. I'm never given responsibility. And the right people want to help. They want to help this company. They hate seeing the owners struggle. I have plenty of clients that say, my staff, they pity me sometimes. And I said, it's a dreadful place to be, is when your team can't be positive. So that's why we're doing this. It's small. I wish a lot of people would do it. I wish we would see more of these things, because I think that I came up in this because people invested in me, and one of those rare companies that do that. Not everyone has that accessibility, and I'd like to make that more accessible to people. Yeah. And honestly, truthfully, there are some owners that have already enrolled. Owners of smaller companies, they're just small enough where they're saying, I need better leadership. We're not saying, hey, you've got to be an employee. But again, we want to know that if an owner is going to take this mastermind, that they spread it forward to their staff when they do grow. When they do grow, they have skills and tools to do so.
I think it's also so important, right, that owners don't miss the importance of, if you've got a bad egg on your team, you can't let the bad egg stay, or that smell is going to get through the whole company and you're going to have a much bigger problem on your hands. So I laugh every time I have a client that'll call and say, we have 2 or 3 calls about one person. I said, we continue to talk about that person. If you were to terminate them today, I would almost bet a steak dinner that your staff would say, gosh, boss, what took you so long? And they honestly, the rest will step up and fill the void. Yeah. It's better than dealing with that. And I think that gets lost. I think an ownership or a leader knows that's probably true, but they just don't see it through that lens. And they're just trying to spare the overtime maybe, or the burnout. But a team would rather be working harder than putting up with someone who's just on their phone in the job, or cussing or complaining or whatever. Yes, so true. Mm-hmm. Okay, where do people find out about Accelerate? How do they get signed up?
Website, restorationadvisors.com. It has its own page, but it's right on the front. You select it, it'll go through, contact our team, and they'll ask you a couple of questions to see if it's a fit, to make sure, because we do want the right people. But restorationadvisors.com, I'm sure you might can put a link in the bottom. It's Advisors, ADVISERS. That's the English version. It's also the only domain that was available. But we just want to make it real simple. It is limited to, we're going to have 3 to 4 sessions. So it's not going to be a lot of people, but we want to make it to where we don't just running around and just have people back to back. But a lot of people are returning from last year's, because this is a step up and it's a little bit different. So we're excited about it. I think, you mentioned we are going to be, Toby and I, Restoration Advisors, we will be at REITs Next Level. That's the 10th, 11th, and 12th. So we'll be starting the week after. So I think that's officially the 3rd week of August. And that's going to, we spaced it out to where we could be finished before the holidays. We don't want people running into the holidays. And, we understand it's hurricane season, and we've got some complexities that we've got to be prepared for there. But every session will be recorded and available for the group only. So that they do miss a session, they will have access to what they missed in the conversations and things like that. So it'll be cool. But yeah, restorationadvisors.com. It's /accelerate, the word with ACC, ELARTE. So
yes, you got it. I'm terrible at spelling out loud.
I had to see the word. We do have an early bird. We are encouraging people to sign up before August 1st for less money, because we do have some onboarding that we'd like to not be at the week of and be trying to scramble to get everybody initiated and onboarding and logins and stuff like that. So we do have a early bird that's enticing to give us some space to do it right. So that's I think it's $100 or $200 less than the overall thing. But after that, it's just going to go back to regular price.
Okay. Perfect.
And if someone, Michelle, I've had this question, and if we can share with the group, if anyone has 2 to 3 people and they want to reach out to us for an abbreviated price, of course, I wouldn't want, while I think the value is there, I understand budgeting. And if you've got 2 or 3 and you want to invest in your team that way, I'm here to support people I'm here to help that team. And if I can make it more financially responsible for them, I'd be happy to have that conversation, and they can contact us through that, and we can work something out that's equitable for everybody.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Anything else that you want to add? Anything that we missed?
No, I want to thank you, Michelle. Thank you for a little over a year now. You've had, you've made the acquisition of CNR. You were, on my podcast. We're in the middle of, you're helping me get back into the podcast mindset. We took a mid-season break.
Yep.
We finished episode 10 and just said, let's get through the summer. Kids are out of school. But we're going to be starting back up just after we get the Mastermind going, disaster podcaster. But I tune into all of yours, and I recommend everyone. They're easy to listen to. You're so good you're the Howard Stern of the restoration. You're a great interview, and you extract good questions from people and answers. So thanks for what you do.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure. I love this industry. I think anybody that knows me knows that. So it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. I look forward to seeing you in just a few weeks at REITs, and we can catch up even more there.
Can't wait. Take care of yourself.
Right. Thanks. You too.
For more Restoration Today, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, or find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts.